Are you tired of playing VR shooters and not being able to shoot straight? From someone who's well known as one of the best aim players in the VR scene, I am here to save you from aim hell. And I'll be covering all of the techniques that you will need to make sure you are destroying all of those lobbies. So, whether you're a new VR player or a seasoned veteran, I'll be sharing the secrets to becoming an absolute aimbot player and dominating those lobbies. So let's start with the freehand techniques. You have your virtual stock option in each game, and this is personal preference. I think there's a case for both sides here on the virtual stock versus no virtual stock debate. One thing I wanted to point out is that no virtual stock is very good for speed and just that sort of flick precision, whereas virtual stock is very good for stability and consistency. So let's get into VR.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be going through freehand and virtual stock. So to start with, freehand. Why should you use freehand? When you're using freehand, you can practice this to the utmost extent and get the best out of it. It's quite difficult because your aim isn't smooth. For example, if I hold my hands out like this, I'm a bit wobbly. But you get so much flick speed that it can be worth using, but it is quite a hard thing to master. So, when you're aiming, you have a few different ways of flicking up. So when I say flick up, you need to have your gun down because this is when you get the most movement speed in most games. Breachers, contractors, Veil, onward, as far as I know that I can list. So when you're flicking up, you have your gun down and you bring it up, and you want it to be at the same point each time as you flick up. So the basic flick up, as you can see, my two hands are out like this. And now the first technique for stabilization to counter this really frustrating wobble is to basically have your hand on your chin like so. Alternatively, you can put your thumb on your chin and keep it out like that if you don't like it being so close. But that's more advanced thing, and you need your, if you're going to be doing that, you need your movement on your offhand. So for example, I'm left-handed, so I'm just going to keep my movement, my controller on my chin like so, and I'm going to bring my hand up like this. So now that you can see I can actually aim and I have some credibility. So then we want to look at the next technique, the arm out lock method, which you have your controller on your chin and you have your arm locked out like so. So your arm is completely locked out, and this is going to be, it's fairly strenuous on your arm, so you want to be careful doing it for too long. But when you're flicking up, you lock your elbows out like this, which gives you really a lot of stability. It's a very advanced technique to do, but if you have it down, you move, you see someone, you can see it's almost 100%, it's almost 100% stable. You can see because my arm is so locked out that it stabilizes it for you. So why should you use freehand? Two things: the speed and the freedom of movement that you get in everything. Now, one thing I would like to cover is that when you're practicing your aim, you want to first of all practice doing an upwards motion to the same spot and then correcting for your target, because this is going to allow you to basically draw this pattern, and then you're going to be able to adjust there. And then basically, after you've done that a lot and you've understood that, you can naturally start getting your reference point to flick directly to those targets. If I go up and left, that's going to be good practice, like so. So, that's one thing to consider when using freehand. So let's move to virtual stock. So in each game, virtual stock can be found in the settings. It's normally under controls or devices, whichever game you're playing. So in Veil, for example, virtual stock 1 is going to be quite low because it makes your hand go up a bit more so that you're on target here, as you can see. So you're gonna do more of a rollout method, which is what players like Natix use, which you go out like this, and basically it's like as if you're giving someone something. So you go out like that, and you have that very fast reaction time to a lot of things. So it's a bit of a stylistic thing where I flick this dominant hand out, but it's like a snapshot that you can do. It's not the most accurate thing, but you're mostly aiming with your non-dominant hand, so it doesn't matter in the end, because if you look carefully, you can see that if I move this, the target stays the same where my right hand is. So moving on to Virtual Stock 2, that's going to be a bit higher, so I'm doing a little bit less of motion, and I can actually get up fairly quickly. And one thing I wanted to note is that the closer your hands are together, the less stable you're going to be, but the faster your flicks are going to be, and the more you can micro adjust. It's like playing a PC game with high sensitivity. Whereas if I have my arms out like this, it's a little bit slower. So yeah, keep that in mind. And there is no inequality between V-Stock and Freehand, in my opinion. I wanted to also say that regarding extending your arm, that works with Freehand as well. Being close, being close and far, there is a bit of a difference that you can use. So if you can see, that's very, very sensitive. Whereas further away, you're doing a bit less. So that's something you can adapt while playing the game, and something you want to learn when you're using your arm far out and when you're using your arm close. But so yes, the next we want to look at controller stacking. You mostly need an outside in tracked setup to do this, because your hand is going to block your front hand, but you can do it a little bit to the side. But what you want to do is you have your hands together and then you bring both hands up. Then that's going to give you a very stabilized aim. You would like to use V-Stock for this, mind you, and this technique is good for games like Pavlov, where there's a lot of recoil. So if you have a lot of recoil, then you want to be dragging down, and you can counteract that. There are a lot of benefits to using controller stacking. However, a little bit of flick speed in some motion smoothing, but it's not so much on headsets like the Rift where you're running at such a low latency with your controllers. But do keep it in mind, because it can impact your speed. But there is no knocking the controller stack technique. It's very, very prominent and very useful. So if that's the way you want it to go, you can also have your hands completely out. It can be beneficial for you. Now, one thing I wanted to cover was the way you can practice is... Okay, so moving on to contractors. This game's virtual stock can be found in the devices, virtual gun stock, disabled. I've only ever used Type A. I don't know what... Okay, don't use Type B because it's bad. Type A is better for the use of contractors, and it's the same principle. It's the same principles. But yeah, that's all you really need to know. Contractors probably pick the CZ as the meta weapon, and the recoil is down and left. So that's all you really need. Contractors, your movement's important. So you want to be wiggling, you want to be doing as much as you can, flicking up, etc, etc. And that's going to let you be able to stay alive and dominate those lobbies. Because you want to be able to dodge bullets as well as shoot really well by yourself.
Okay, so next I want to talk about stock. So when you're considering your choice of stock, it's not something you really want to cheap out on. I personally recommend the Pro Tube just because I've been using it for absolute years. The customer service and everything is superb, and it's very lightweight. If you're going to get a Pro Tube, I'd recommend the carbon model. However, what I really wanted to say is the stock doesn't matter, but what you need to do is you need to stick with the setup that you made at the start. Don't keep changing it, otherwise it's just, you're never going to be able to be consistent or practice with it, and you're just going to hate the stock.
So you can have your stock set up for speed, like so. So one way you can identify if you have a stock set up for speed is that you have your controllers, if they're Oculus based, pointing forwards. You can't do this on index, otherwise you'll break your wrists. But when they're pointing forwards, you get a nice ergonomic grip. It's as if you're C-gripping a rifle. So that's going to give you extra stability. And if you have if you're aiming without using the chin, you don't want to use the chin because you're just going to clash against all of your gear. And no one wants to do that because you're going to A, scratch all your stuff up, and B, it's going to be inconsistent and annoying. So instead, you have it aiming down here and you want to align it with your eye. So when you're bringing it up just here, you want to align it with your eye in game. So my sight would be just down here, right? So when you have this, you want to be practicing your flick up, and the way you want it set up is that you want the most of the tension in your dominant arm when you're pulling up. So if I tense my dominant arm and then release the tension, it goes up like a snap, and that's what you'd like to do. It's quite a difficult sweet spot. However, once you've done it, you're going to have a very good stock for speed. If you want a stock for just precision, what you want to do is bring your controllers up a little bit like that. That's going to raise it a lot. And then you want to bring this down a little bit so that you have your controllers bringing a gun that's aligned, but you're going to have it so you have a bit more horizontal movement like so. However, one thing I'm going to cover is the micro flick, where essentially you want to have your stock set up so that it's a little bit loose in your armpit here, so that you have a bit of movement so that you can tilt it like so. You can see it's moving along my arm. So don't grip too tight. Don't pull too tight on it. You want to have just the right amount of tension towards your body. So the looser your arms are, the easier sniping is going to be at very long ranges, because you're going to have a lot less movement. But for speed and precision at close range, you're going to want to be tense. So that's one thing to consider. So jumping into Veil here, I've got my Rift set up here. The Rift is a very, very good headset for speed and precision, and it's what I'd certainly recommend if you have a PCVR headset. Quest is completely fine. You're not gated by what headset you have. There are some different caveats in different games with sort of recoil going up to frame rate, but you don't need to worry about that. The rule of thumb is you can practice your skill and you can get up to the top no matter what kit you're on. So we've got the Rift and I've got my stock. So what are we going to do with this stock? So what we're going to do with this stock is we're going to practice our flick up. And this is getting your gun up as fast as possible on target. It's all about tensing your muscles correctly, making sure that you're consistent every time, and you want to be getting that headshot. I mean, some games headshotting is not as good as others, but if you can headshot, then why not? Is what my saying is, because that's going to put you above players that don't practice it at all. So one thing you can do with Veil is you can put your virtual stock on. I know some players do this. It's not going to work well with mine, but it can smooth out your aim quite well, and it can help you quite a lot. I personally don't do this, but it's up to you. So I'm a bit wobbly here, but I have that extra leeway where I can flick left and right. And then getting into that, with this setup, not all stock setups you can do this. However, if you have sort of a loose grip on your shoulder, then you can tilt your stock left and right, and this can give you a bit of micro precision when you're dealing with small adjustments. And so that you don't have to keep moving your arms and wobbling about, and you can just be really consistent. There's a bit of vertical movement, but that lateral movement is really important for being able to basically just micro adjust onto people. So that's fantastic. Now I'm going to get into some ways that you can practice your aim without having to just play pubs and get shit on by other people. If you're practicing your aim, you want to diversify it into many different drills. So you want micro flicking, you want tracking, and you want flick ups. That's gonna break down your aim into various different components so that you can practice each one separately. One thing I wanted to get into is when you're practicing, you want to start off by flicking up to your center point and then adjusting, because a lot of people fall into the trap of flicking up this way, and it's just you want to get your center point first, because that will come naturally. You want to, instead of drawing the vector, you want to draw the up and then the side, and that will get you started on being able to eye in on all of your targets. So another way to practice your aim is picking a high magnification optic. So Veil, for example, you're going to be looking at the ACOG, and what this allows you to do is play, because you're flicking to people really quickly. This ACOG is going to basically eye you in so that you're more precise, and it's going to be harder to actually aim with your eyes, so you're more aiming with the feel of the weapon. And because you're aiming with the feel of the weapon, you're developing a muscle memory for aiming, which is what you want, rather than just seeing and shooting. You want to be able to see, oh, person there, straight on target, right? So instead of lining up your shot, you eventually want to get to the point where it's a second nature to just shoot straight onto someone. And that's why high magnification practice is really good. Obviously, you don't want to use it in your main game, but it is a very, very good way of getting that practice. This is something that Chowie mentioned ages ago, and he's one of the greatest aim players to mankind. So that's what I wanted you guys to understand from playing without a stock. You have many, many options to use in terms of what playstyle you want, and there's many pros and cons to each one. So for a start, this is a bit of a weird take, but I actually recommend that you play Contractors as a game, even if you don't enjoy it. It's interesting because the amount of engagements you get in Contractors is enough to greatly accelerate your aim, which is something that you don't really get while playing games like Onward or 5v5 bomb planting shooters or whatever. So what you can also do in Contractors is, if you go into single player, free roam, you need to go and get a custom map, because there's lots of aim training maps. I use this map here quite often, shooting range test. Bring the butts down and whatnot, and then launch. So this, using the meta weapon in Contractors, the CZ-108, and this helps you practice your headshotting and your recoil. So you have infinite ammo, and you can just do this for a while. You can set various things so that your headshots are better. So if I set my multiplier up, but then set the base health up, it's gonna greatly reward me for Contractors. Contractors, you want to be moving, as I said earlier. So so you just want to be going through these targets, going for the green headshots and whatnot. Even if you're missing, you want to be using full auto. It's pretty good for just getting that consistency, especially on the flick up. If I go freehand, because Contractors has a weird thing where if you aim too close to your face, your recoil goes sky high. But other than that, just keep your consistency. You can be perfectly accurate as freehand without much issue at all, really. I mean, I am a stock player, but I'm pretty confident that if I did practice freehand, I'd be perfectly good at it. So yeah, let's move on to VR Aim Trainer. There's only two good functions for this. The rest of all this, I wouldn't bother wasting your time on all these like circles and whatnot. That's not going to get your aim very good, because realistically the people that you're shooting are going to either be jumping or head height. They're not going to be in these stupid angles like here and here and here. And even so, when you're practicing or when you're playing games, you're still going to adjust for them, so I wouldn't really worry about it. So there are two modes in this that I really like. One is called basic tracking, full auto. So you hit this, you hit start practice mode, and you can set the speed and the target size. Target size 2, just because that's the closest to headshot. This isn't a fantastic game for actual one-to-one practice, but if you have the target speed at 10, you can practice adjusting for people counter-strafing and stuff like this, where you're going to be very quick, and it's going to help you really trace these headshots, so that if someone peeks you really quickly, you're ready for it and you're ready to track them perfectly. And that's going to really help. So you're not obviously going to be 100% on this, because it's almost impossible to react that fast. But you're going to get damn close the more practice you do on this. So I'd wholeheartedly recommend this this exercise for tracking, just because it's the easiest and most convenient, that takes the least time and you get the most out of it. So the next one I wanted to cover was, it's a similar thing. This is how I got pretty good at killing people who are jumping, and it's a terrain 360 full auto. And if you have it on these settings, 3 and 10, although they're a bit small, as they jump, you can practice going round in circles and getting different angles. So you're aiming at different angles across your body. So normally you want to be standing up straight and whatever, but if someone's right behind you, you need to flick round, then you have these angles here. And this is going to be a different aiming scheme to the other ones, but you can practice this, go around in circles, hoping that your play space and your tracking stays. And you can also practice flicking up like this, flicking up like that, flicking up like that. And this is a great method for being able to practice consistency 360 degrees. I just hit my desk. So don't do that, but fantastic stuff. So one thing you can do is put your gun on single fire and practice getting your headshots. So this can help you micro-adjust your targets very well and keep your trigger finger good. But it's also going to let you work out where the sight overbore is in the game that you're playing. So in Veil, if I shoot this close, you can see the bullet hits a lot under my sight. So you've got to take that into account when you're aiming for that headshot, so that you're consistent. So there we are, guys. I hope I gave you a few pointers on how to get better at aiming on all levels, and I hope people who already play a lot can get better, and people that are just getting started can actually get and compete in most of these public lobbies. I would like to say, if you meet me in any of these games, my Oculus is T-Party, my Steam is T, so you could just see me as T or whatever. And I'm completely open, so ask me about anything. I am more than willing to talk about anything that you want and give you any advice. I'm going to be streaming in the next few days, so make sure you stay tuned. And I'd like to say thank you for watching the video, and I hope you learned something from this. And I'm going to start making consistent content now, so stay tuned. Thank you very much, and I'll see you later. I also left a little frag movie at the end.
They're playing slow and be like,
I told her please don't free up on the first day. I ain't work hard or get as far just to fly out that quick. I wear chrome hearts and gold yards, so tell your man he ain't rich. I'm with the first one for my high school to be the first say I'm too rich. Yeah, listen, cause rule one, don't cash out or try style out for no shit. I don't trap, no, I just kick back, let my drill show where it is. I ain't tryna hear no stick, that to me just ain't top pick. I feel like Watson in 2020. I got my city flexing tea instead of Henny. I'm on telly, Sam with Wiki Hound, sweat round that Chevy, girl you ready? Pink Flamingo, if they shout me, I'ma tell them we should. I feel like Watson in 2020. I got my city flexing tea instead of Henny. I'm on telly, Sam with Wiki Hound, sweat round that Chevy, girl you ready? Pink Flamingo, if they shout me, I'ma tell them let's get loose now. Spin on the block tonight, like I really might slide on my top like boo or song. We're taking payments tonight, you know that I'm on. I'm tryna be smooth tonight. You was really down last week, you was out last week. Why you tryna be crude tonight? Hot girl summer this year, why you tryna chase back like you tryna be cute tonight? Yeah. What kind of a game? Tonight, I'm gonna tell
out of it.
But let's flex, we're moving off food tonight. Like I wanna be on my truth tonight. Like I wanna be on my goose tonight. Like I wanna make sure my moves are right, my grooves is right, my juice is right.